Hello, everyone. This is Alonzo. Want to know how to get your first cloud job? Then please register for our webinar. We'll teach you everything that you need to know and answer your questions along the way. Hope to see you there. Hello, everyone. This is Alonzo. Want to know how to get your first cloud job? Then please register for our webinar. We'll teach you everything that you need to know and answer your questions along the way. Hope to see you there.
My name is Richard Ferrer, and I can say I am cloud hired.
That yes, come and join and get cloud hired. I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
Hey, Go Cloud Architect family, I'm cloud hired.
So I'm cloud hired, guys.
So I'll just say I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired.
I'm cloud hired thanks to Go Cloud Architects.
It worked for me, and now I'm cloud hired.
Because of Google Architect program,
Right.
I am cloud hired. See!
I am cloud hired. Thank you, Mike and the GlowCloud team.
Right. Welcome, everybody, to another beautiful week here at Go Cloud Careers. My name is Chris Johnson. I'm the Chief Operating Officer, joined today, as always, by Alonzo Coleman, our Chief Marketing Officer, and Mike Gibbs, our founder and CEO. We come here every Monday to answer any of your cloud career questions. So if you've got cloud architect career questions, cloud engineer career questions, or cloud computing in general, any questions about the cloud careers in the cloud, we are here to answer those questions for you, hopefully to help you get to your goal just a little bit faster, share some of our experience, expertise, and knowledge with you, and help you reach your dream career. So we are live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch. I think that's all the platforms we're on right now. So if you've got any questions, however the commenting works on the platform that you're watching in, make sure to put any questions in the comments. If you're on YouTube, put it in the chat box. If you're on any of the other platforms, I really don't know how they work. Just put them in there, and we'll get to your questions. I promise. That is the whole purpose of this, is to answer your questions and to help you. So don't be shy. Ask those questions. We can't do anything if we don't have any questions to answer. So if we don't have any questions, then we'll just end. So hopefully you all have some questions for us. I know it takes a little bit of time for people to usually start putting those in the chat box. So that's why I'm reiterating, ask your questions. Don't be shy. It's inevitable. People always wait. And then when we absolutely threaten to leave, lo and behold, all the questions come in. So I'm starting now. I'm threatening to leave. Hopefully that will get some people to ask their questions. So again, my name's Chris. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here, and I don't have much to say at the beginning. I got a few things to share with everybody, but I'll ask Mike and Alonzo to share a few words for us before I come back and tell you about a couple of things to help you out.
You want to go first, Alonzo, and then I'll.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, again, I can't, Chris always gets the awesome intros to us, and definitely that precursor of waiting to the last minute. And I think that's indicative of a lot of people's habits, if you will, that they feel like they have time. And a lot of times that's not the case. So let's consider the fact of your career and how we're able to help. Don't wait to the last minute to start answering questions or finding that trajectory that's going to be best helpful for how to transition yourself into becoming a cloud architect. So we want to make sure that all your questions are answered. But before that happens, start laying them out. Start thinking about what your career looks like to you starting now into your future. And we want to help shape that and transform you into the best cloud architect out there. Over to you, Mike.
Welcome, everyone. My name is Mike Gibbs. And for those of you that don't know me, I've been every kind of architect you can think of for the past 25 years. Whether it be a network architect, an enterprise architect, a business architect, you name it, I've done it. And I've spent more than 2 decades getting people the job of their dreams, helping them get promoted, helping negotiate a $50,000 to $100,000 raise. And I want to help you be successful too. Last week, we got 4 more architects hired. 2 of them didn't work in tech ever. One was selling perfume in their past life. One was a program manager that got their first tech job as a lead architect. And all of you can have the job of your dreams. Prior to my 25 years in tech, I practiced internal medicine. I was a nurse practitioner. And literally speaking, 6 months later, I was leading designs at the world's largest ISP. And the key is with the right training, with the right plan, and the right energy and enthusiasm and passion, you can do it all. And I want you to have it all. What helped me is, when I first got my first tech job, I found the VP and said, hey, what do I need to do to be the greatest network architect? And he gave me a list of everything that mattered. My peers were focused on getting 18 million irrelevant certifications, and I did the things that the VP told me. 6 months later, I was a lead architect on Wall Street, designing the largest market maker on the NASDAQ's network. 2 years later, I was a principal architect because of the guidance that someone gave me. And that's why I'm here for you. So you can find out, how do you build that career of your dreams? How do you learn those special things that the most elite and high-paid architects in the world get? How do you transition from engineering to architecture? How do you transition from a non-tech role to a tech role? What are those things that you need to do to get promoted and raise your salary? We can help you with all of that. So ask us your questions so we can help you. I got to tell you, the happiest part of my day is when someone's hired. I love it. Or when someone says, Mike, I got a $100,000 raise. And that's why I'm here to help you. So ask us your questions. I see we've got some questions coming in, but don't be shy. Don't procrastinate on your questions. What'll ultimately happen is the media will reach out and ask for comments, and I'll run out of time. Happens all the time. Or something else is going to happen, and I want to help you. So please, here's your chance. It's normally about $1,200 an hour to speak to me. There's an 18-week wait, and that's why I come twice per week. Once in our completely free How to Get Your First Cloud Job webinar, which you can sign up for and we can speak face-to-face, and the other is here. So ask your questions so we can help you, and let's help you build an incredible career.
All right, so our first question is going to be from Bernard. Bernard over on Facebook says, I've been working as a cloud security engineer for the past 6 months. How do I transition to become a cloud architect step by step? Thank you.
Wonderful, Bernard. And two things. One is I'd like you to download the completely free guide. My team will pop it for you. And that's going to give you a list of everything that you need to understand. But Bernard, the first part is understanding that a cloud engineer and a cloud architect, the only thing they have in common is the word cloud. See, an engineer is a builder. If you're a cloud system security engineer, either you're configuring firewall rules, or I don't know what you're doing there. You could be doing vulnerability management. You could be configuring firewalls. You could be configuring IAM systems or designing IAM systems as an engineer. But engineering is a hands-on role. Architecture is not a hands-on role. It is a business role. So the first thing you need to go from engineer to architect is to stop thinking about engineering. Architecture is about how do we solve business problems with technology. So that means developing your executive communication skills, because you have to talk to executives. You have to find out the goals from the executives of their business. Are they trying to increase revenue, for example? Are they trying to increase operating efficiency? Are they trying a new sales strategy? Are they trying a new supply chain? So you've got to find out that business requirement. Then, I just want you to understand the job. Then you've got to document the business architecture as it stands right now, how the business operates. And then you've got to document the technology architectures, the data architectures, etc. From there, you have to develop what's called the target architecture, which is what the business is going to look like in the future. And that involves looking at the people, the processes, and the technologies, and then that you need, and then figuring out which ones they are on the cloud. So now that and then what we do is we design the solution, we present it back to the customer, we sell it back to the customer, we help negotiate a deal. So we're not going to be touching the technology in our world. So to become an architect from an engineer, you have to learn business, how to communicate to business executives, as well as the C-level suite, that's called CXO relevancy, how to sell, because you're going to be constantly selling. You're going to be selling stakeholders on your vision. You're going to be selling your internal teams for resources. You're going to be selling the customer your design. So you're going to have to build some sales skills. And obviously, we teach all of these in our Cloud Architect Career Development Program. You're also going to need to develop extremely good leadership skills. And here's the reason why. With every architecture, we're going to have to lead the customer into the right solution. We're also going to have to build a team of people. There's my favorite African proverb that says, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. I love that. And architecture is just that. After I speak with my customer, I have to find out what needs to be done. And here's the things that need to be done. I'm going to need to build a team. You know, no good architecture is designed by one person. There's business people involved, there's security people involved, there's networking people involved, there's data people involved, there's AI people involved, there's all of that. So you're going to have to build that team that can build that digital transformation plan for your customer. And from there, you're going to have to sell it back to the customer. So now you know why we need good leadership, good sales, good CXO relevancy. You also need good business acumen, because you have to understand how the business works, how the business makes money, for example, how the business operates. Because once you throw technology into the business, it changes everything. A new ERP system could change the way people work, for example, or a new sales system or a new CRM system affects the way sales reps would actually find information about their clients. Everything changes once you put technology. So you have to have the business knowledge to understand the business. And then you need the technology knowledge to know which technologies to select. And then from there, you come up with your architecture. Now, Being an architect, you're going to be presenting at conferences, you're going to be presenting at executive briefings, you're going to need really good presentation skills. And then you need design skills, which are the exact opposite of engineering skills. Engineering skills are how to build, which are how-to skills. Architecture skills are more why. Why do we need this? What's the impact on the business? And how does the system work? So I want you to get really deep in understanding how systems work. You can't do this with cloud projects. You can't do this by hands-on engineering things. You need to really learn the technology. And we used to say what's going on under the hood, so to speak. So I need you to learn how systems work. And I'll give you the difference why hands-on doesn't teach you how it works. Lots of airplane pilots know how to fly a plane, but nobody asks them to design a new airplane. I can guarantee every person on this call knows how to use a web browser. 100%. Every one of you did it or you wouldn't be here. But most people don't know what happens when they click on that link till the time the web page is displayed on the screen and all the things that occur when the web page is being changing back and forth and going back and forth. So I need you to focus on the how. So I've given you a really good document to read that's going to list every single skill you need, technical and business. And I also want to invite you to the conference on Thursday. It's going to be completely free. We can speak face to face and you can ask us questions live. We can interview you live. We can ascertain where you're at with your communication skills, where you're at with your understanding of the cloud, and we can even make specific recommendations for you. So the step-by-step is learn business, learn leadership, learn sales, learn CXO relevancy, learn how the systems work, and then you're an architect. And then it's simple to go on an interview and get hired. The key is having the right skills, which are architect skills and non-engineering skills. And you can't mix them because they're completely different set of skills. Great question, Bernard. If you desire more questions about that, I'd love to answer it further, but I think I gave you a good amount of depth to start.
All right, so I'm going to encourage people to keep asking questions. Got a comment from Richard here, wonderful student, client of ours. So happy to see my boss and teacher again. We're so happy to see you, Richard.
Richard, sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off, Chris. Richard, anytime we see you makes me smile, and I know you know that. Whether we see you on TV in your old life or you're designing an architecture for your client, lots of people, you have so many things to offer, so many.
Absolutely. Yeah, I just had a great conversation with him this weekend, and it's always a pleasure speaking with Richard.
Finally, now he'll stop blowing you up and calling you out on live stream.
I guess one good turn deserves another because Angelo said that I blew him up, so I guess it's par for the course.
It is. Well, I mean, rightfully so. Angelo wasn't responding. Well, neither were you. So, here we go. Here we are. So. All right. So I want to encourage everybody. If you please ask us your questions in the chat boxes, whether you're on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, ask us your questions so that we can help you. We've set aside an hour. Sometimes we go a little longer if we're able to, but we always set aside at least an hour to be able to do these. So, make sure you get those questions in while we know we're going to be here. I don't want somebody to wait until that last minute and like Mike said, something comes up, we have to leave, or one of us has to go take care of something. We've blocked out our schedule for 2 o'clock to 3 o'clock Eastern time, so we are here specifically 2 to 3. If we have more time, great. If we don't, well, we've got that 2 to 3. So our next question is from Sanad on Facebook. What are the good certs that are fit with cloud security for no security experience?
Okay, so now let's actually get the difference between certifications and competency. There are 0 certifications in the world that will teach you security, and every hiring manager knows it. Now, there are some certifications which will look good on your resume and help you get an interview. Let me go over those. I typically recommend avoiding anything with a CompTIA. And I would typically recommend staying away from anything like an AWS security or a Google security. They don't even scratch the surface of security. Now, I do like the following 2 certifications, and I'll explain the rationale why. My favorite security certification is the CISSP. And the reason I like that is it teaches the the principles of security architecture. Anybody can learn commands, but this teaches the principles. What does the security policy need to look like? What kind of education do you need? What kind of devices provide fit perimeter security? What kinds of technologies can catch actors? How and why should you think about designing your demilitarized zones? Should you consider honeypots and other things in your architectures? So the gold standard for security certifications is the CISSP. Now you can take that regardless of your level of experience. But if you take it without having 5 years experience, you're going to have a CISSP-associate. You can explain that to any hiring manager that you took the real CISSP exam, but due to lack of experience. The next one that I actually like is the CCSP. I don't like it as much as the CISSP, even though it's a cloud security certification from the same people that make the CISSP. And here's the reason why. 98% of organizations have more than one cloud. And many of them have hybrid clouds where they have a data center. Many organizations have a private cloud. Look, JP Morgan Chase said they saved $2.2 billion a year by using a private cloud versus using a public cloud like AWS. And when you have really critical security, you can do much more in a private cloud than you can in the public cloud. So they're my two favorite on the security certifications. But we also need to know what your goals are. For example, if your goal is to do offensive security, there's a CEH master and an offensive security professional. Neither one of them are very complicated certifications, but they are regarded on the offensive. Offensive security is an ethical hacker. Defensive security is what I do, which is protect people. Now, here's the thing, Sanad. Since hiring managers, as a rule, don't care about certifications, they care about your competency. I want you to pick a form of security that you're good at and truly master it. Or do you want to become an expert on zero trust? Start learning about zero trust, writing about zero trust, showing the world you're an expert on zero trust. Do you want to focus on next generation firewalls and how to integrate them? Are you focused on AI security? But I want you to learn security. How do you truly lock down systems? How do you protect organizations? And how do you give companies what they really need? So get away from the certification, because the certification is just fluff. It's marketing speak. And then really learn, how does a next generation firewall work? How does that intrusion detection and intrusion prevention work? Why would you use a layer 7 firewalls versus a layer 3 firewall? Even though you have a next generation firewall, why might you add an intrusion detection, intrusion prevention system in there? What are the main principles of identity access management that are used by real organizations? What are the encryption strategies that are used by real organizations? What type of network security can be used to do things? How are systems hardened? What kind of services need to be removed from the operating system? What kind of patches need to be there? What kind of anti-malware protection needs to be there? What kind of education needs to occur of the users? What does that security policy work like? So now you learn that, you're always going to have a job. So I like to view certifications as kind of like the intro ticket to the park, but you have to pay to get on every single ride. You pay with the knowledge, which are the things that I'm telling you about. Certifications are just, it's a little stamp that says you passed the test. But I've interviewed 6,000 certified people. And of the 6,000 certified people, 50 were capable of doing the job. So certifications are a rubber stamp, which is good. They will help you get an interview. And I like to look at them as icing on a cake. Your knowledge, capabilities, energy, enthusiasm, passion, motivation are you. That's the gift. The icing is the certification on top, which makes you look better. It's like putting on a good suit for an interview. The real secret is being great. And I gave you what you need to be great. And I'm happy to answer that question with much more depth if you desire.
All right. Next question is going to be from Steven.
Yeah.
It looks like. I couldn't tell if that was an I or an L because of my resolution on my monitor. I was like,
new configuration to that name. Okay, I like that.
All right. Hi there. I have no experience in the cloud field. However, I've been trying to dive myself into it by learning and getting the foundations. Are there any suggestions for me to get a cloud job, taking in consideration that I have some basic certifications, AWS and Azure? So before I let Alonzo or Mike speak to these, Mike just got through talking about the the realities about certifications. And so that I'm sure he might mention some more about that. But I want to invite you to register for the webinar that we've got on Thursday. We put the link there in the chat box a few times. And the reason I'm saying that is because in that webinar, as part of our presentation, we go down the whole list of everything that if your goal is to become an architect, what you need to do. Now, you haven't told us what you desire to do in the cloud. So not real sure which direction to go there. And if you can give us some more information about a specific role in the cloud, cloud architect, cloud engineer, cloud DevOps, cloud, whatever cloud, and then preface cloud, and then the title afterwards, that we can give you some better information. Again, because each of them are different. Each of them have different requirements. Each of them have different levels of knowledge, and each of them have different skill sets that are necessary to develop. So if you can give us that. Again, also, I still want to invite you to register for that webinar. Because maybe you're not sure which direction you want to go. And that webinar might be able to help you determine a direction. So without that, knowing which career you're interested in, I'm not comfortable giving any advice on suggestions for how to get a cloud job. So Mike or Alonzo, do you want to add anything, or you want to wait until we see if we get some clarity on the role?
What I think, go ahead, Alonzo.
Well, we could attack it from two different options, but I think the prudent would be to have Stephen provide a little more, bring that into focus on what his career goals are, so that we can give him the best advice possible.
And I think that's great, but what I'm probably going to do is pick 2 or 3 careers, because I think we have the time right now.
Okay.
You can go over it, and I think that'll be helpful for others, and maybe spare them to ask the questions that they need. So, Steven, there's nothing in any cloud certification that will prepare you for any job ever. And I know that's hard to say, but there is nothing in the AWS Certified Solution Architect Professional that makes you ready to be a cloud engineer, a cloud architect, or anything. When I see more than 3 certifications on a resume applying for a job, I don't interview the person. And the reason I won't interview the person is as followed: after more than 3 certifications, I know that person's getting stamps on their resume and they're not learning. Because what you're taught in these certifications in most cases is exactly opposite of what you should do in real life. So if you want to be, I'll go over a cloud architect, I'll go over a cloud engineer, and maybe a cloud security person along the way. And then please tell me what you want so we can truly help you. Let's say you wanted to be a cloud engineer. And I don't recommend engineering careers right now, because artificial intelligence can do most of what an engineer can do, but it can't do most of what an architect can. An architect job is completely irreplaceable by engineering. But if you wanted to be a cloud engineer, for example, you'd need to master Linux, Python. You'd have to master infrastructure as code as a cloud engineer. You would have to get really hands-on in building systems on the AWS cloud, the Azure cloud, for example, if you wanted to be a cloud engineer. And if you're a cloud engineer, you're going to need to write Bash shell scripts and Windows PowerShell scripts, and it's going to be all about building, Steven. And the reality is none of those are covered in any AWS certification, because you're not going to be using a management console in real life. It's going to be deployed as infrastructure as code, and it's going to be Terraform. It's not going to be any AWS CloudFormation or Azure Bicep or anything like that. Now, the cloud architect's job is to design, present, and sell technology to improve a business's performance. Again, none of that's covered in any of these certifications. So you have to understand for the architect how the technology works. Now, Steven, 98% of customers are multi-cloud, which means they're going to have a virtual machine in the data center, probably on VMware. Of course, it could be on KVM or QEMU, or it could be on Citrix, Zen. It could be on Microsoft Hyper-V. And it's no different than if it's an EC2 instance on AWS, a compute engine's on on Google or an Azure virtual machine. So for the architect, you're going to have to learn all those fundamental technologies. And in the description of these videos, the chat box, we're going to pop a link of everything you need to know for the architect. Plus, you can come to this thing. But for the architect, it's also about developing the business acumen, the leadership skills, the stakeholder management, the project management skills, the sales skills, and executive presence. Again, none of that's going to be covered in the certification. And if it's security that you wanted to do, again, we're not going to be using any of these cloud native security tools. They're not enough. Here's the reason. Let's say I've got an enterprise grade security and I decide to use AWS WAF as my firewall. Something breaches my firewall, and guess what? We'll get a CloudWatch notification. You've been hacked. But you're going to get notified you've been hacked, you've been hacked, you've been hacked. If I swap out that cloud native firewall stuff for something real like a Palo Alto firewall or a Fortinet firewall or a Cisco firewall or a Checkpoint firewall, when the system starts to get hacked, the firewall itself will use its intrusion detection, intrusion prevention, either reset a TCP connection, apply an access loss on the man, and actually stop it. So for the security people, again, it's going to be learning firewalls and IDS, IPS systems and access lists and encryption strategies and IAM strategies and system hardening, and none of that's going to be covered by any of these certifications. So the real key is figuring out what you want to do and then actually building the right career plan. Certifications are like wrapping paper on a pretty gift. You're the gift. You got to develop your gift to be what the client wants. So please tell us what your goal is, and then we can get you there. But there's no job that you can get just by taking some certifications. I really wish there was, but there's none. And there's, a DevOps engineer does a different job than a cloud engineer, who does a different job than a software developer, who does a different job than an architect, who does a different job than a database person, or a big data person does another job. So that's why we really need to know where you're going. Because a doctor gets a different education than a nurse versus a physical therapist versus a pharmacist. And we have to be that specific in tech.
Fareed says, I have many questions, but would like to speak to you personally. How can I do that? So Fareed, I responded to you in the chat box as well. What I would suggest is if you want to, you can join our webinar on Thursday. It'll be on Zoom, so you can come off mute and talk with us and have conversation and ask us questions. Or you can ask your questions here. All of these opportunities are completely free to you. Now, if you want to speak one-on-one personally, you are more than welcome, and I put this in the chat box, you're more than welcome to sign up for a one-on-one consultation. However, those are not free, and those take several weeks to schedule and set up. So that is usually not the easiest, which is one of the reasons why we do all of these free opportunities and make ourselves available. So if you want, go ahead and start asking some of your questions here, and maybe you don't get them all answered now, and you join us on Thursday and get the rest of them answered, or you get all of them answered now and you still can join us on Thursday and get more answered. So take advantage of us while we're here. We purposely set these times aside because we know that there's so many people that we might be able to help by taking a few minutes to answer their questions. Let's see. Next one is from Samuel. I have a Linux background. Should I learn networking before AWS? So I'm going to preface this with the same way that we did Stephen's response was, what do you want to be? What's your goal? What's your desire? What's your career? That's without that information, we can't provide a good answer. And don't get me wrong, we could provide you answers. Like, there's plenty of people out there on YouTube and on LinkedIn that will tell you everything that you need to know without even knowing what you want to know. Without even knowing what you're asking about, or without even knowing what you care about. They'll give you an answer. They'll tell you, here's what you need, without even knowing what you want. So that's, I know it might seem a little different that we're not giving you an answer. Well, because we want to make sure that we know exactly what you want or exactly what you need. It's like, Mike says this all the time. It's like going to an airport. Where can I fly? If you're going to Atlanta, if you're walking into Atlanta's airport and you ask where you can go, there's everywhere in the world you can go. If you walk into the airport down the street from me at Lakeland, Florida, not as many options, but they'll still ask you, where do you want to go? So, where do you want to go? What do you want to do? I could tell you can go to Cape Town, South Africa, or you could go to Tokyo, Japan, or you could go to New York City. Where do you want to go? And then we'll feel much more comfortable answering that question. So, Samuel and Stefan, if you want to answer, tell us what you're interested in. What's your goal?
And Samuel, I want you to know why we're being so precision here. I had Daniel Bosa, who spent $35,000 on a boot camp and wasn't hireable because nobody asked him what career he actually wanted, and they just gave him generic stuff. I retrain everybody else's students. I retrain people with master's degrees in cloud computing because they have this, here, we'll just teach you stuff. But a doctor does a different job than a nurse. A cloud architect can't work without knowing networking. A cloud engineer isn't going to be successful without knowing networking. A programmer doesn't need to know networking, for example. And the list of skills that you have is very dependent upon the career that you actually desire. But I will tell you one thing. If you want to understand cloud computing for real, you have to understand the data center and the network. And here's the reason why. You strip away all these silly names that the cloud provider spent millions or billions of dollars, Elastic Compute Cloud, and you're back to a 1990 VMware virtual machine. You get rid of VPC flow logs, and you look at Cisco in 1999, and you see Cisco NetFlow. I mean, it's all the same stuff. That's 20 and 30-year-old technology with brand new names, and it all comes from the network and the data center. But a big data person really doesn't need to know networking. They need to know big data. An AI person needs to know AI and all the different methods, whether it be natural language processing or whether it be machine learning libraries or deep learning or how to get to the results. But they don't need to know networking. And they don't need to know cloud either, because they could do it on the cloud or off the cloud with similar TensorFlow, PyTorch type libraries. So the key is knowing where you want to go. And that's why we want to be so precision, because planning your career is no different than a doctor treating a patient or a lawyer treating a client. You have to analyze your goals, then we have to analyze your starting points. And then from there, we need to figure out what the gaps are. And with the gap analysis, fill in those gaps, and poof, you got a great job and a fantastic career. So I truly want to help you. So please let us know where you want to go. And please ask us your questions so we can help you.
Yep.
Yeah. Don't be shy.
Here's a good one, and I love this name. Be intentional. I love it. And the question matches the name. How to know which cloud career path is right for me? I don't have a tech background, and there's so many specializations. See, that's where we're going.
Yeah.
What do you want? What are you interested in?
What a part of the cloud or technology are you interested in? That's a great starting point. Do you like to speak to people? Do you not like to speak to people? I was doing some research about Clop and their malware and all the things that they're doing out there, and that spoke a chord with me about security and so forth, or the networking, the plumbing of how things come and go. So if you could share that, that would be great as well. But those are some of the starting points of being intentional about your career. So we definitely want to help you with that. And let's speak to this tech background. You don't need one. No. I didn't have one initially. I started off on the other side of the brain in the marketing arena. So whether you had the tech space or whether you didn't have the tech space is irrelevant, because we provide that starting point at ground zero for anyone, so that A, you get the comprehensive understanding of the agnostic cloud. B, it eliminates any gap analysis that we may have to do with your prior background in tech or the lack thereof. And it provides an organic growth for you to be able to have that initial starting point to understand the cloud, what it is, what it does, and when you would use it. So we want to help you with that. So by us sharing this information, maybe that'll give you a bit of a starting point about whether you like networking, security, or a generalist approach about cloud architecture.
Okay, so, and I'm going to add to that. So, but I'm also going to give you some things to think about. And what I'd like you to think about is, if your goal is maximum career advancement, you really, you look at architecture versus engineering, it's architecture. Because architecture has so much business acumen, so much leadership, so much sales, so much executive presence. It's a beautiful path to a CIO or a CTO role. And it typically pays double what engineering roles are. And architect roles are not susceptible to being hit or hammered by AI like engineering roles. So keep that in the back of your mind. Architect roles pay double, triple, quadruple over your lifetime earnings. And you don't have to work as hard as you would as an engineer. If you don't mind talking to people, you don't mind entertaining clients and buying lunches, dinners, and drinks, and your company paid an American Express card, if you're happy to meet people, talk to the board and things like that. Engineering careers are very behind the scenes. Now, for people that don't like to talk to people, engineering careers are great because they can sit at their desk and they can code and configure all day long. But because they're far away from the business, which means far away from the money, they pay much less and they have much less paths to advancement. So here's the thing. If you like being behind a desk and coding and configuring and building, engineering is exciting and wonderful. If you're like me and you like going out there and meeting people, and you have to sit behind a desk as an engineer, the 6 months that I did as an engineer was like a prison sentence for me. I hated it. I was stuck at a desk. I didn't get to talk to people. I was miserable. And I went and became an architect and couldn't believe people paid me for this job. But I've got some friends that love being engineers and they love it. So you got to do what makes you happy. I will also tell you that the cloud architect role there's more opportunity than you can think of. I don't think I could possibly fill half of the positions in the world. Enterprise architect, same thing. Artificial intelligence architects, great. I think there's also some very good opportunity in the machine learning, artificial intelligence, deep learning, and big data space. There's going to be. We're collecting the data, the technologies for artificial intelligence there, and that's a great place for an AI architect. For the behind the scenes people, it's great for some AI engineers too. Lastly, security. Security is a great place to be because the more stuff goes on the systems, the more it's open to hacking. Cloud security architects, obviously in the best place. Security engineering, still an option. What I recommend is never getting near any programming careers. Artificial intelligence can code. Programming is taught at every university, and there's free programming boot camps you can go out there. And why do I like to stay from this? So in economics, we have this thing called the supply and demand curve. And you've got these two lines that intersect. The greater the supply, the lower the price. And since everybody and their grandmother and their grandmother's grandmother knows how to code, the worst career opportunities you can find in tech are programming careers because everybody knows it and you have to compete with the global market. And it doesn't matter whether your coding person is in California, Cambodia, Chicago, Cameroon, or the Cayman Islands. It's going to go to the place with the lowest cost workers because all we care about is that somebody's writing the code, and 80% of the code is machine learning generated already, and 20% of it is actually just tuned and edited. And the AI hasn't even got there. Microsoft just dumped $10 billion into ChatGPT, another $2 billion into Facebook's AI thing. So there's what I would tell you. But you tell me what you want to learn, and I can ask you some questions. I really can help you. Tell us what you like, and I can help you too. But your background doesn't matter. Ivan Tamba worked at AWS. He was a college student working as a waiter. Coyote was a college student working at AWS. Jeffrey West was a power lifter, and he was a geologist before we trained him and got him an architect job. Noah was a social worker, now working as an architect, for example. Raymond was working in retail sales, now working as an architect. I mean, I can give you example after example after example. They can get any job they want with the right training. So do what you love, and that's the last thing. Don't do a job that makes you miserable. Do something that makes you happy.
All right. So Samuel responded saying that they want to become an AWS solutions architect. And as a reminder, this was the question. I have a Linux background. Should I learn networking before AWS if I want to become an AWS solution architect?
Okay, Samuel, great. Now we're talking. First, I want you to download that free Get Our Architect Job Guide. That's going to list everything you need to learn. If you wanted to work as a, I'm going to say cloud architect, not an AWS solution architect, for the following reasons. You can only work at one company as an AWS solution architect, and that's an AWS. And 98% of organizations use more than one cloud. So if all you know is AWS, consider yourself to be unemployable. You need to know the cloud, not AWS. It's the equivalent of learning how to drive a Honda, but not knowing how to drive a Toyota, a Ford, a BMW, a Mercedes, and a Volvo. It's just nothing. So yes. Now, lastly, what I would say is AWS would be the last thing that I would learn if I wanted to work on the AWS cloud. The first thing that I would learn would be networking. And there's a list of all the networking skills in that document. The next thing that I would learn would be data center technologies. Why? If it's a virtual machine, it's the same virtual machine in all clouds. If it's block storage, it's the same block storage we've used for 30 years in all clouds. If it's object storage, it's the same 30-year-old object storage in all clouds. Granted, AWS may call it S3, Azure may call it Blob, and Google may call it cloud storage. If it's file storage, it's the same in all clouds. If it's a database, it's the same in all clouds. So the reality is you learn AWS by not learning AWS, because when you take an AWS certification, they teach you a name of a service and how to configure that. Now, it may sound counterintuitive, but I can teach you that a plane has a rudder. But if you're not a pilot and trained on how to use that rudder, you just know that it's a rudder. And in the AWS certifications, all they teach you is the name of something and how to configure it. But architects don't configure anything. They design. So you need to know how it works. So first learn the network, then learn the data center, then learn business acumen, then learn leadership skills, then learn sales skills, then learn executive presence, then develop your emotional intelligence, and then take some AWS exam or Google exam, which you can do in 2 weeks to 4 weeks, and you'll be certified. And then you're going to have the skills to get a great job and get hired. And that's really the secret to getting the job and being good, is to learn how it works. Learning how to fly a Cessna doesn't work if you need to fly a Boeing 777, but learning how to fly a big plane does. So that's why we're teaching you this. So learn how to drive them all. And then when you get a better offer from Azure than you did from AWS, you can say, yes, Azure, and you're not stuck. And then when you think you're going to work for AWS and then you get a job for a big bank that's got a $500,000 average bonus to the person, you can say, I'm so glad I learned the cloud and not AWS. And you'll work anywhere, anytime, and you'll be perfectly. So learn all those things before AWS, and you should be good to go. But if it's an architect, remember, 50 to 80% of the job is business. So make sure you get that business skill training somewhere else. Because Samuel, that's why I take cloud engineers that have been engineers for 10 years, and they need just as much training to be a cloud architect as a person that used to be a nurse, because they're completely different. So whatever it is, no matter where your starting point is, you can be a great architect.
All right. So our next question is going to be from Michael. Michael asking, please, what's the path or transition from a network engineer to a cloud architect?
Okay.
Great. We actually have a video about that, I think.
Yeah, we did.
I'll put that in the chat box, but I'll let Mike talk about it because I know Mike loves networking.
He loves networking. I do love networking. And Michael, I don't believe in certifications. My intro to networking was the Cisco Certified Internet Expert. I did it when I had about 6 months experience in networking. My number is 7417, back when it was a 2-day exam and it was actually challenging. Before Cisco got angry because people kept failing it, and they made it an easy 1-day exam. And I'll tell you, the path to go from a network engineer to a network architect is very similar to the path to go from a network engineer to a cloud architect, because architects are just architects. Now, Michael, I want you to think about network architecture versus network engineering. So network engineering is you configure something on a router. Router BGP 65312. You put a neighbor statement, neighbor 192.168, remote AS 65313. You add a network statement, network 10.0.0.0, mask 255.255.0.0, and then you do a neighbor statement and an activate. That's network engineering. Network architecture is I'm going to home to 10 different internet service providers, and I want to load share without getting out of order packets. I'd like to send this subnet out Verizon, this subnet out NTT, this subnet out AT&T, this CIDR range out through Telefonica, for example. That's architecture. So it's not the how, it's now the why. So all of those things that you would need to know as a network architect, how to design BGP, how to design a WAN, for example, how to micro-segment your systems. We all do as cloud architects, because the cloud is half network, half cloud. So then, Michael, the key is to take the networking and go from the how-to the how-to design. And then add those data center things, servers and virtual machines and containers and storage area and networks and the such. Again, there's a beautiful list that we wrote to in that document. And then realize that since we don't touch the tech and people pay us to be consultants, and when I worked as a management consultant, which was a business architect, and when I worked as an enterprise architect, and when I worked as a network architect, it was really the same job. Interviewing the C-suite, finding out their business goals, finding out their business challenges and pain points, interviewing the department heads and all other key stakeholders, interviewing the customers to see what the customer experience is, speaking at conferences, writing thought leadership documents, for example. These are all business skills. So, Michael, take the wonderful networking experience that you have, which is great, turn that into design, develop the data center, and then learn those key business skills. And when you learn those key business skills, you can do anything. I mean, truly anything. So that's the path. And please join us on Thursday, because in addition to that free guide you're going to get today, it'll be on Zoom and we can have a face-to-face conversation, and I truly want to help you.
All right. Let's see here. Bernard, how do I reactivate my account as a returning student? I signed up in 2022, but had to travel. So what I'm going to ask you to do is send an email to info, INFO, Igloo, Nancy, Foxtrot, Oscar, at gocloudcareers.net. So I'm going to put that in the chat box from Chris Johnson, info at gocloudcareers.net.
Well, we definitely want to welcome you back, Bernard. We want everyone, once they start, we know life gets in the way. It could be anything personal or private, but the fact is that we're always here. We're always welcoming our students, regardless of what life throws at them, to come back, finish what they started, and become and transition into the cloud architect we want, that you all want to be for yourself. So welcome back.
Yeah, and just come to class. Reach out to Chris. He'll make sure your account's good, and we'll welcome you back in class. We don't care. We just care that you get hired. We'd be thrilled to honored to see you back.
All right. So I guess the summer heat is getting to a lot of people. I don't know if it's summer heat or beautiful weather. Maybe not as many people wanting to do any studying or questions about learning out there playing in the summer. But we don't have any more questions. If anybody has questions, give them to us. We are here to answer them. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's beautiful outside. I live here in Florida.
You live in Florida.
If you don't have any more questions, I'll go out. I am a quarter of a mile from the beach.
From the beach.
I'm perfectly fine going out there and having some fun. But if you guys have any questions, guys, gals, men, women, everybody in between, if you got any questions, ask us some questions. We want to make sure we answer your questions. We set aside this time to be able to help you. While we're waiting on some questions to come in, because inevitably they're going to come in. If they don't come in, we'll be leaving in 5 minutes. So maybe that'll get some people to ask some questions. So while we're waiting on the questions to come in, I completely forgot to talk about the things that we had for you guys. We've been mentioning them periodically, incidentally, throughout the broadcast, but I want to take a moment to pointedly mention them. So as you can see above, we've got an interview guide for you. So we've got a free How to Win the Interview guide for you. Tyrone's been posting that in the chat box. I'm not going to ask him to post it again, but it's there in the chat box for you. It's also in the description. Well, Tyrone just posted it there in the chat box for you again anyway. Also, we've got our How to Get Your First Cloud Architect Job guide. Of course, we've been mentioning that throughout the webinar. Chat box has the link. Description has the link. There's other guides as well that I'm not going to ask it. Tyrone, stop flooding the box. I know we want them to have the resources, but just leave it at those two. The rest of them that are in the description. We've got the why aren't tech skills enough? We've got the how to get your first tech job. Maybe you don't want a cloud architect job, but you're interested in a tech job. We've got that free resource in there as well. We've got our free webinar that we're doing on Thursday. The registration link is there in the description as well. All of those are there in the description for you. We want to provide all these resources for you to help you out. So make sure you get those. Sorry, I completely forgot to mention those at the beginning. We just got straight into the questions today. So there we go. Now, a question did come in from Mohammed. Let me see. I think
Mohammed is going to take a lot longer to answer than Ruben's.
Okay, let's get to Ruben's. Where's Ruben's? Okay. Oh. What job role is most recession-proof?
Ruben, anything related to sales is the most recession-proof, which means sales engineers, solution architects, cloud architects, enterprise architects, generally speaking, they don't get laid off. So I'm going to tell you who gets laid off, and I'm going to tell you why they get laid off. The first sets of people that get laid off are the bottom of the company, the bottom 10%. Most companies used to annually lay off the bottom 10%, and in recent years, we've stopped doing it. So the first people that get caught up in a layoff are the bottom 10%. The next set of people that get laid off are the people that don't have good social skills and high levels of emotional intelligence. Now, once we get through those, the people that get laid off are back office workers, sysadmins, marketing people, operations people, recruiters, and HR. And here's the reason. The business can still function with less of them, but the current people that are there that exist. So, for example, if I'm a solution architect or a cloud architect and I go talk to some big bank and I close a $300 million deal, and that's small compared to the deals that I've closed in my career, I just brought in $300 million in the company. They can't lay me off. Now, the DevOps engineer that's going to configure it, that's in California earning $160,000 a year, he or she is gone. And I'm going to hire somebody in India for $15,000 or for $30,000 a year and replace them. So any back-end engineering position is the first kind that gets laid off. So be tied to revenue. And you can see this in all industries. You can see it in, for example, the doctor brings patients to the hospital. And even if they yell and scream at everybody at the hospital, the nurse is the one that gets in trouble when they have a conflict at the hospital, even if the nurse is right. You can see, I went to the blood bank the other day to donate blood. The people that take a $10,000 medical assistant training program are getting paid $16.50 an hour to expose themselves to hepatitis and HIV and needle sticks. The person that stands outside the bus that says, hey, come in and donate blood was earning 20% more money directly on there. And so that's the key is if you're tied to revenue, you're not going to get laid off. So be in sales, be a sales engineer, and get out of back-end positions. Now, the next part of not getting laid off is not being in a job that can be automated. A sysadmin's job can be automated by infrastructure as code to a large degree. And a sysadmin job like writing a script can be automated by artificial intelligence. So what you want to do is get out of any job that can be automated. You can't automate architecture work because I got to go talk to executives. I got to learn about their business. I got to talk to all the people there, and then I got to go sell them something, negotiate a deal. Can't lay that person off. It's sales or revenue is the lifeblood of the company. So move to revenue generating position. I've written articles, I think it was in Forbes and CIO Magazine and all these big tech publications about avoiding a layoff, and that's how you do it. Get out of engineering and get into sales roles. Sales engineering, solution architecture, cloud architecture, enterprise architecture, and you don't need to worry about it. They're the most recession-proof.
Absolutely. And like Mike said, that is every single industry everywhere in the entire world. All right. From Mohammed. For me, I'm interested in networking and multi-cloud networking for managing and deploying resources. As a cloud network engineer career, how to achieve?
Okay. So Mohammed, I'd skip the whole cloud thing periodically and I'd learn networking for real. That means learning BGP really well. I spent 10,000 hours consulting on nothing other than BGP. I would focus on learning IP addressing and subnetting and supernetting. I would focus on WAN technologies and WAN optimization. Because it's not just VPNs and IPsec VPNs and SSL-based VPNs and Ethernet private lines and Ethernet over MPLS. We're dealing with the software-defined networking WAN. We're dealing with SASE solutions now. And if you truly understand BGP peering and BGP and IBGP, then whether we're dealing with VPC peering or VNet peering or any of these other things, it's the same stuff. You know, the first time I looked at AWS Cloud Hub, I'm like, wow, that's really interesting. Back in 1995, I used an IBGP route reflector. Oh, wait, this is the same tech. So really learn networking. If you learn that, then you can learn the cloud thing. And then you can truly understand, what did we do in networking? We micro-segmented our networks. Why? Well, because if I could put finance in this VLAN and accounting in this VLAN, they were separate from each other. And because I had a route between them, I could apply an access control list, which is much better than IAM. How do you do that on the cloud? Since the cloud has almost no security and the networking capabilities of the cloud are limited to 1990 networking. Well, you take your systems and you divide it into 1,000 VPCs and you pair between them. So really, it's about learning that. Now, granted, there's some transit gateways and transit VPCs in the cloud, but if you really know networking, you're going to be there. Now, again, Mohammed, I don't recommend engineering careers in the world of AI. I don't recommend them. And if you're going to do networking careers or hands-on anything engineering careers, I really recommend you build your leadership skills, your sales skills, your executive presence, your emotional intelligence. So when they do engineering layoffs, and they're going to, you can move into the architect jobs, which are hiring and hiring like crazy. Because AI is going to remove half of these engineers. Unfortunately, many of the engineers didn't study business and don't realize it yet. So if you want engineering, it's fine. Just make sure you become what I call the distinguished engineer. The engineer with those sales skills and business skills and leadership skills and emotional intelligence. And those engineers, they actually get roles, they're distinguished engineers. They pay 2 to 3 times more than the average engineering role. And because they're tied to revenue, they never get laid off. And they get promoted and promoted and promoted and promoted and promoted. So that's how you're going to build an engineering world in a career in the world of artificial intelligence. It's no longer just about the tech. You have to get those business skills as well.
All right. And so there's a question from LinkedIn that isn't populating over here, so I'm going to read it out. It's from Caleb on LinkedIn, asked about the roadmap to becoming a cloud engineer.
The roadmap to becoming a cloud engineer, and I don't recommend this career because of artificial intelligence and what's going on economic-wise, but the roadmap is this. Learn the network and the data center first. When you learn and understand how the network and the data center works, for the cloud engineer, you need to master Linux, because most of what you're going to be working with is Linux. Because it's a cloud engineer is a half sysadmin. In addition to that, you're going to need to know Python, write bash scripts, and Windows PowerShell scripts. So I'd get pretty good at scripting. Now, the cloud engineer is going to be building stuff. So that means to some degree, you're going to use the CLI, but mostly you're going to be using infrastructure as code. So for a cloud engineer, you need to really know Terraform and know it well. Nobody's going to use AWS CloudFormation type things in a world where 98% of customers are multi-cloud. And as a cloud engineer, you're going to really have to focus on building, and building some more. So, set up simple things like websites, start building, multi-tiered systems as a cloud engineer, start building projects. Now, I don't want you putting these projects on your resume, like people will tell you. That's just going to keep you out. You don't bring it, but you have to have that competency. And ideally, find an internship somewhere. Like everybody at Go Cloud Careers gets an internship, and that's why all of our students get hired with no experience, because they have an internship on their resume. But find an internship if you can, or a place where somebody will let you volunteer, because you don't want to put a project section in your resume. That's like, so what? But if you actually have a company that you can do these things under, it's going to really help you. And then I need you to go out there and build a brand and make recruiters come to you. And you'll get a cloud engineering job. And then also you've got to obviously learn the cloud, but that goes without saying. Now for the architect, an AWS certification is silly because it's a funny name for a virtual machine. And when we make an architecture, we're going to call it a virtual machine anyway. But for those engineers, they need to know deeply in the weeds how they're tuning these S3 buckets on AWS versus Azure Blob. So you got to get hands-on time. The engineer and the architect are exact opposite careers. Architects design, present, and sell. And the engineers like the construction crew that takes the blueprints and puts it down. So those are your skill sets to become an engineer. And you can do it. And you definitely can, and you can build a good career like that. Just be very cautious. Make sure you build those business skills, leadership skills, sales skills, communication skills. And when AI removes a lot of those engineers, they can't touch the architects, but they will touch the engineers. You won't be removable because you'll have those special humanities skills. I like to say, celebrate your humanity. AI doesn't replace people with good human skills. AI replaces people that can just be replaced because all they're doing is writing a Python script. So develop all that and you'll be a well-rounded, very capable engineer.
All right. A question from a user on LinkedIn as well. Let's see. I asked for some clarification from them over on LinkedIn, but haven't received it yet. So the LinkedIn user says, I just got here, but everyone who I talk to tells me I'll need a sysadmin help desk role because without actual job experience, I won't get an entry cloud position. Do you agree with this?
Not even 1%.
Well, what's your desired role?
Yes.
Cloud position is a very general term.
Yeah. But no, we all get our first job. Last week, I had 4 people get cloud architect jobs, and 2 of them never worked in tech. Daniel Bosu didn't even graduate high school when he got a cloud architect job. Jennifer Emu was a mental health therapist, and she got a cloud architect job. Raymond was selling perfume, and he's now working as a cloud architect. Kemi was a project manager, and she's now working as a cloud architect. Ivan Tamba was a waiter, and he's now working as a cloud architect. And that's for architects. So the point is, and I can give you example after example of people that got wonderful, wonderful jobs with no experience. Employers demand competency. Competency. Experience just means you've been doing something. Competency is what matters the most. I've interviewed people with 20 years experience and they don't know anything. And then I've hired the person next to them with 0 experience. Experience is a proxy for competency. It's not the same. Now, if, and here's the big if you don't have any experience, you have to be better than the experienced people. You've got to have better interview skills. You've got to have better marketing skills. And you have to be great and lovable. And that is the secret. I've gotten people jobs with 0 experience. Al became a senior solution architect at Deloitte. It was his first tech job. First tech job. And I could give you a million examples. Noah was a social worker and became an architect. It doesn't matter. Delray was an EMT on ambulances before he got his first cloud security architect with our training. Your background is meaningless. What you do today, the actions you take, and your competency are everything. People told me that lie when I was younger. I wanted to be a network engineer, and people said, Mike, you got to be a network admin first or help desk. And you know what I said? You're crazy. And everybody told me I was crazy. My first job was as a senior network engineer, and 6 months later, I was a lead architect. Within 2 years, I was a principal architect versus the 15 years experience. Be great. There are no rules. You'll see 30-year-old CEOs when everybody tells them they need to be 80. There are no rules. The actions you take determine how good you are. Where you get your training determines how good you are. Will you be able to get your first job on your own without the help of a training organization? I don't know. But with the right people, you'll be able to get any job you possibly desire. I see it every day of the week. Lonzo, how many people that you've seen with no tech background got great cloud jobs?
I've lost count. I mean, you think about how many people we've transitioned or through their efforts and through their work following the program. That's at least, 5 to 6 just that week alone. So you think about how that's happened over time has been an amazing experience.
All right. So our next question comes from LinkedIn as well. How difficult will it be for one to transition from being a cloud engineer into being a cloud architect?
You know, Jerica, I'd say it's about the same as if you never worked as a cloud engineer in the first place, based upon my experience. I've got a lot of cloud engineers, and here's the thing, Jerica. If you can forget the engineering thinking, it'll be very easy for you. If you're caught up in engineering thinking, it's going to be very challenging. And here's what I mean by engineering thinking. Engineering thinking is how to. Architecture thinking is why, design, sell, manage stakeholders. Now, Jerica, I'll tell you this. If you can leverage your cloud engineering experience and forget about all the engineering thinking, you'll be one of the best architects. Because I will say, when someone has a very strong technical background, they often become a better architect if they don't focus on the tech. And that's the difference. It's a mindset difference. So as an architect, someone says, Mike, I'm trying to increase my revenue by 3%. What can you do? As an engineer, when I design a blueprint for a new website or a new way to reach the client, the engineer builds it. So if you can get out of the mindset of building and leverage all that good knowledge that you have of understanding how servers work, understanding how the network works, understanding what APIs do and how databases work, and you can keep that. And now you can start focusing on how can I leverage that knowledge to design a solution and build the better blueprint. You're in a really, really good place. So the key is, when the techies are talking about acronyms, you're talking in plain language. When the techies are talking about writing a Terraform script, you're talking to the executives about how one of the engineers on your team can simply write a script and it can deploy their entire infrastructure in 60 minutes, which would normally take 50 sysadmins to do. That's exciting. When you're an engineer and you built something, what was the impact on revenue? What was the impact on operational expenses? What was the impact on corporate efficiency? So as long as you can focus on that, I think it's easy. But then again, I get a cloud architect hired pretty much every day of the week. And some were cloud engineers first. Some were software developers first. Some were waiters. Some were Uber drivers. Some were nurses. It doesn't matter what your starting point is. What really matters is how hard you're willing to work and whether you're willing to follow the right plan. But if you've got that background, it's great. We can easily help you do it. But if you're coming from engineering, most of the transition is design, learning how to design, learning how to give the right presentations, learning how to lead, learning how to sell, learning how to build a business case, stakeholder management, all that businessy stuff. That's the job.
Right. Let's see. Currently, our last question is from Mafuzar. Any recommendations of books that you have found valuable for cloud architecture and systems design?
Yes, books on macroeconomics, books on microeconomics, books on finance, books on leadership. Very, very helpful. Books on reading body language, books on stakeholder management. Super, super there. As far as books on system design, there's nothing out there. The only thing that I would recommend is reading the TOGAF framework, which is used by IBM and Cisco and Microsoft and everybody that matters, which talks about the framework for architecture. It talks a lot about, finding out what the executives want with your architecture vision, baselining the business architecture or how it works, coming up with the new target architecture for the business, what you want the business to look like, performing the gap analysis between the ultimate goal for the business versus where it is, and then figuring out which technologies support the business architecture. So if there's anything that I would actually recommend on architecture itself, it would be the TOGAF framework. It's not a perfect framework, neither is the Zachman framework or the DoD framework. None of them are perfect. But that's probably the best thing that you could look at with regards to system design. But 90% of it really about it being an architect is being a better leader. I learned more in my MBA program about architecture than I ever did from a tech course. I took about $100,000 of executive communication and executive presence and sales and emotional intelligence after my MBA, and I use that as an architect every day. And actually, I used to practice internal medicine. And the way I asked the client a series of information and presented back to them, I learned in internal medicine. So those would be where I'd come from. But, first start with the business, because, all of architecture is about improving business. And if you only learn the tech, you're not learning architecture at all. You're learning engineering. So first start with the business and then follow that up with the TOGAF framework. That's really where you're talking about. That's a great question.
Yeah, that is a good one. I like that one. All right. Well, it doesn't look like we've got any more questions. I see somebody said I like people, but I also like coding. Okay. Well,
it sounds like you got a decision to make.
You got some decisions to make. And there's nothing wrong with liking coding. Like Mike likes networking.
I love it.
He loves to play. Trust me, the guy's a geek. He is a geek. And little known secret about me, I'm a data guy. Like, I love data. Like, I know some things that a lot of people don't know that I know. But it's not my career. My career is operations. My career is making things happen. But I love data. And you can ask anybody that knows me, and anybody that's ever worked with me. I love data. I love numbers. I love analyzing data. So maybe you love coding. Great. But maybe you love working with people and dealing with people and solving their problems and coming up with solutions for them. And maybe that's what you want to do. And maybe you want to earn a little bit more money. So maybe that's the route that you go with your work. But just because you decide that you want to do something doesn't mean that there's not a benefit to the other things. It just means don't focus a lot of time, effort, and energy into furthering those other things that you love until there's a benefit to you. So yeah, again, it sounds like you got some decisions to make, CN. but just keep that in mind. And maybe the coding is the one that's what you want to do, something with your career that involves coding. Great. If that's what makes you happy and that's what you want to do, then go do it and be the best at it. Be the absolute best at it. So if we're going to end on anything else, because it's been a little bit since we've had any questions, if we're going to end on anything, I think that's a great note. There's two things that I think everybody has to hear, and a lot of people don't hear it. The overwhelming majority of people don't hear it. You can do whatever you want to do. You have the ability to do whatever you want to do. Now, I'm not saying that everybody has the ability to be Michael Jordan, but everybody has the ability to do what they want as a career. It's not what can you do, it's what do I want to do.
Yes.
And then find something that you're passionate about. Don't do something because other people say you should.
No.
or because other people say it will be good for you, or you need to, or do it for why you want to do it. If the why you want to do it is good enough, then you will enjoy it. So that's my parting words. And then of course, get your free interview guide and your free how to get your first cloud architect job guide and join us on Thursday's webinar. Those are my last words, but you can do whatever you want to. It's just finding out that thing that makes you that drives you. So.
And I have to agree with Chris. Find what drives you, but be great at it. So I've got a friend who loves teaching yoga. He's had a yoga studio for 20 years and it's successful. He's not good at it. He's great at it. When it comes to software CN, you must be great. Last week, I recorded a video that I was going to have transcribed, and somehow my microphone didn't make enough noise. So I texted an audio engineer buddy of mine, Doug, and I said, Doug, can you fix this? Doug, who does not code, used ChatGPT, wrote a bash shell script to increase the volume on my video, and said, Mike, I just coded and I don't know how to code. And that's the secret. So if you want to be on the side of coding, you can't be an ordinary coder. You have to be a top 1%. The top 1% never gets let go because we're always going to need the elite of the elite. The world's greatest always have a job. And whether it's Michael Jordan or whether it's Kevin Mitnick, the hacker, the best of the best always has a job. Now, granted, there's some fields like architecture which are much more immune to the economy, that they'll always have a job and they pay more and they have more. But I can tell you this, if you're great at what you do, you'll always have a job and you'll always get promoted and you'll rise to any level you want if you're great. So if you want to code, I want you to live it, eat it, breathe it, and sleep it and think of nothing else. And that's the only way you're going to be good enough to survive in the changing world. If you love networking, great. I love networking. At one point, I had 10,000 hours consulting on just BGP, literally BGP. And you know what I know about the best networking people? You'll find somebody that only knows SD-WAN and SASE, and they don't know anything else. No wireless, no unified communications, none of it, because they're an expert on that one thing. And that's okay. Those experts, no matter what kind of AI or tech, cannot be replaced because they are human encyclopedias of knowledge. All of you can be whatever you desire. When I was a firefighter paramedic, it was interesting. When I was a nurse practitioner practicing internal medicine, it was interesting. When I was practicing as an enterprise architect, it was interesting. When I practiced as a business architect, and I periodically would just change jobs because I got bored. And you can do anything you want if you work hard enough. But be great. Love what you do. Work to get better every single day and build the career of your dreams. All of you can do it. And please come visit us on Thursday in the free webinar. Ask us some live questions. Download the free interview guide, the How to Become an Architect guide, and one of the many, many free things that we've done for you to help you in your career. And build the career that you desire. Alonzo, any last words from you?
How can you put icing on icing for this cake? You know, you guys have surmised it pretty well. I just really emphasize that people follow your dreams. Life, this is no dress rehearsal. This is it. You hit the ground running, you learn, you grow, you rinse and repeat. And we're able to help you with your cloud architectural dreams, your goals and aspirations. So if you didn't have the opportunity or the time or the questions to share with us, bring them in next time, and we'll be happy to help you get you there and help you realize your architectural cloud roles, dreams as being cloud architects or any type of derivative of that. So let's go cloud careers, and let's get you guys cloud hired.
All right. Thank you, everybody. We will see all of you tomorrow night on Head in the Clouds. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Take care, everyone.